Today we have an author and a personal trainer. He runs a company called Better Being, and they mainly do corporate training within the wellness space. His name is Greg Stark, and you can find him on Instagram under either Better Being PT or Greg.Stark. Greg, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Did I get all the details right?
Yeah.
I've been stuffing up a couple of them lately, but trying to get better every time. Now, Greg, my first question is, in the current climate that we have now, can you give us 2 or 3 things that you try and make sure that you maintain within your daily routine to stay sane?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's funny you ask that question because I was thinking about that today. And my priority is always make sure that I'm well. If I'm well, then I can help everyone else. So that's number one. Yeah, eat, sleep, move, all those foundations, making sure that I'm doing those. And then it's second is looking after my family and checking in with them and making sure that everyone else is staying sane. And then I help everyone else. That's my team, my clients, and help them get through this time. So it's not necessarily what I'm doing just myself, but it's how I can help others as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's full on.
Yeah, but that reminds me a bit about your book, actually, that I just read. So Greg is the author of Sweat Equity, and kind of the framework of the book is mindset, movement, nutrition, and recovery. And that sounds like that's kind of what you're trying to think about right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I mean, the book is an extension of myself and the fundamental principles of what I've learned throughout the years and not just an experiment of one, but what I've experimented and implemented and seen and observed with clients and people over the years as well.
Have you seen a change now with some of the new challenges that we have within your group of clients? Is there something that you can kind of identify that's, a common challenge that's new?
Yeah, well, I think in the space of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or feels like 3 months and 3 years, the world's just been flipped on its head. And I think everyone's still in a bit of a stage of, what does this all mean? What does this all look like? What does my new routine? How do I deal with, kids being at home and at school? And, how do I deal with not being able to go out and see my friends? So I think everyone's still just trying to work it out at this stage, but I think we'll see in the next few weeks that people start to get a bit of a rhythm, and I think a lot of the things we're doing now will be the way that we work and live well into the future.
Yeah. I mean, a common question that I ask before all this happened is like, what is your morning routine, or what do you do in the morning to try to set yourself up for a successful day? Do you have something that you are doing now in the mornings? Because I'm guessing it might be a little bit different to what it used to be.
Yeah, probably fundamentals are still the same, and my daily rhythms are probably a bit different to most, where I do a lot of coaching of people in the morning. So I get up first thing, get ready, coffee, out the door, train people. Yeah. But I always make time around that sort of 9 o'clock mark is my time to get focused for the day. And I take some time out. I'll go and have my breakfast. I'll read the paper, and I'll map out what I'm going to achieve.
Give me some more details about that. So what's for breakfast these days, and what are you reading in the paper?
Well, I guess my routine's been thrown out in that sense of, I have my usual coffee shop, Part 1 Espresso. Yeah. Shout out to them. Every morning come down, avo on toast, long black coffee. They look after me there, and the newspaper's there, and that's my routine, and it's there. Where now it can sort of be anywhere. I can't sit down in the coffee shop, so that changes. So often I'm sitting in my car and I'll read, and I've got my notepad and I'll write things down, and I'll just get a takeaway coffee and breakfast and do it that way.
Do you try and stay updated every day on the kind of the corona situation as it unfolds, or are you the personality to try and avoid it and just like, all right, let's try and just stick to normal positive stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've sort of, of recent moved away from getting too caught up in that. I think from the day that this started happening, my perspective in life is always look for the opportunities, look for the positives, find the good in things. That if we look at all the things that are taken away from us and look at how it's impacting, and some people have had, their whole worlds have changed, businesses that they've built up for 40 years closing overnight. So, it's devastating, but I always try and look at it as an opportunity to pivot and move and, I'm probably overly optimistic about things often, but I think that's the best way to get through crisis.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Okay, one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about, which I love, is that you have written and published a book. I think that's amazing. And I mean, with everyone spending time at home now, maybe there are people out there as well that are trying to write a book. I know there's definitely some of my friends that have been in that process for a while. Can you talk about, let's do really the whole story around your book. Maybe begin with where the idea came from, and was this kind of the first book project that you had and you saw all the way through, or did you have others that maybe failed on the way, or how did it all unfold?
I guess, it feels so long ago now, and I think I said to you earlier that the scars of going through writing it are still there, that I haven't brought myself to even think about doing a second book, but I love the process of it, and I recommend it for everyone. It doesn't matter what you want to write about. I think it's a very good way to get very clear and concise on what your beliefs are, what your approaches are, and even reflective on the things that you've managed to achieve over your life and the things that you've learned throughout that period. So I loved it from that sense. I guess my drivers originally when I was, why I decided a book would be a good idea is one of my first mentors when I got into the industry was big on, you're going to be limited in the capacity of which you can help individuals.
Yep.
So you need to think about other ways, and this was long before we had Facebook and technology and those sort of things, that think about other ways that you can influence and help people. So it's always sat in the back of my mind that writing a book would be a really great way to have a greater influence over people. And it's been amazing to get messages and, even messages from yourself. Can you come on my podcast? But messages from people saying, thank you for writing that book. It's really helped me change and get clarity. And I've transformed, lost 10 kilos and, I feel so much better and managing my, mental health conditions and all those sort of things. So, it is amazing. And I guess probably a more personal aspect to the book was my mum's an English teacher. So I didn't read a lot when I was in high school and it used to kill her. Test of the D'Urbervilles didn't really appeal to me. But for her to be able to say her son's a published author, I think was a pretty good driver for mum. So she was very proud the day it all got published, and she went and took a photo out front Dimmick's bookstore to celebrate her son being a published author. So that was a very more personal aspect to it.
That's awesome. And I think you, with the book, you've kind of solved such a common problem that PTs have, right? Is that a lot of their limitation is just, really, if you think about it in a narrow way, they can only work with one person at a time because you're doing personal training. But writing a book and getting people to read it, they develop a relationship with you through that book. It's kind of limitless how many people you can reach, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's powerful. And I'm much more comfortable in that format than what I would be, even videos. And I'm not a person who likes to post a lot of stuff on Instagram and those sort of things isn't who I am. But I like to write and think and tell stories more than other aspects of sharing. And people can have great influence through those mediums as well. But I think it's finding what you're comfortable with and what you're best at. Is what I've tried to stick to. Yeah,
that's awesome. Can you talk to us about some of the challenges that you had in the process of publishing a book? Because I'm sure that's not easy.
Yeah, it was, I guess, finding a publisher. And there was the whole thing of, do I try and self-publish? Do I find a publisher? But what I liked was the credibility that came with finding a publisher. Having someone external to say, your idea is worth writing about. The problem with our industry is a lot of publishing agents either want you to have a following of 1 million people or they want you to write the next 5-minute ad book. And I didn't want to write a book about 5-minute abs because it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a book that was probably blocking out all the noise and making things very simple and clear for people and giving them, a clarity and a framework to build a healthy life around. So the first publisher I approached, they said, it's not ready. It's not, we couldn't publish this. And then I dealt with another 10 publishers, and every time I was dealing with a publisher, I was refining it, and they would ask questions about where does your book sit in the bookstore, and things like that I hadn't really comprehended. And what is the story of the person who's going to be reading your book? Who are you writing this for? And so the more clarity that I got around that and the more questions they asked me, I ended up coming back to the first publisher that I ever dealt with, and they bought in on the idea, and they loved the concept of what I had developed it into.
So the second time you came back to them, they were on board.
Yeah, they were on board. Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask some basic questions, backtracking a little bit. So how does that work approaching publisher? Do you write a well, obviously you write it, but you print a physical script and send it to them, and someone there will actually read the whole thing?
I guess there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I was quite fortunate that I had some clients and friends and things that people that had gone through the process as well. So I got their advice. I guess the main part, they can help you write. They're very good at helping you write. So they don't need a polished article of a book by the time you go to them.
Oh, okay.
But they want to prove a proof of concept. They want to see that what you've got and what your background is and what your approach is going to be is something that people are going to want to read. So rather than the traditional submit your manuscript and we'll get back to you, I had got referrals to different publishers and pitched my book idea. That's how we ended up getting to that stage. And then it was probably a 9-month process, I would say, in terms of going back and forth of writing different sections and building upon it and, getting feedback and going through it all.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I had no idea. So basically they want to see the concept of the book, make sure that works, know where you sit in the bookstore, and know what type of person will buy the book, right? But when you did the pitch, was that a live pitch in front of like a panel of people from the publishing store? Were you nervous, or how does that work?
So Simon & Schuster, the publisher I went with, I actually got a meeting with the managing director there, and he was amazing.
Yeah.
And just spoke to him and told him, my story and my background, and I'd submitted more about what the book was and why it fitted into the market and where it fitted into the market and the sort of people that would buy it. And he got it. He got the concept of what I wanted to write about. So that wasn't too bad. That part was fine, because I think by the stage, at the time I got back round to him, I was used to the questions that were coming through and knew what to expect. So, and then once the book was finished, you then have to pitch to the sales and marketing team about what your book's about and get them excited about it. And that was a bit nerve-wracking, but that was great fun as well, because we got them into it and they could relate to the book as well. And I think when people relate to something and they believe in something and they can see the value in something, then it makes it a lot easier for them to pitch and sell. So
they go out to the bookstores then and then pitch the book basically to create space on their shelf.
To prioritize it. So
wow. Yeah, that's super interesting. So your journey though started more, not more. It started as a PT, like you became a trainer, right? And I think you were the 2011 Trainer of the Year or Exercise Physiologist of the Year.
Yeah.
What was
2011, wow.
Yeah, a little
long time ago now.
Yeah. So where did your journey start as a trainer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess it started back. I've always had a big passion for sport, and I had a lot of injuries as a kid that really, prevented me from participating at a high level, really. And
did you play rugby?
Soccer, football. But I've always played a bit of everything. I've played a bit of rugby and cricket and all those things. But I decided I wanted to go in sports and exercise science and find my way from there. And soon after starting the degree, I looked around the room and said, at the end of this, we all finished with the same bit of paper. What's going to set me apart from anyone else in the room? So that's where I decided I should start training people, and through training people, I'll be able to apply what I'm learning. And again, reached out to a few people I knew that were working in the industry, got a bit of an idea from them, started in a gym working on the front desk, doing customer service roles, and then did my PT degree at the same time doing my sports and exercise science degree, and was able to start training people.
Yeah, wow.
So I did that while I was at uni, and then towards the back end of my degree, I got accepted into working with the South Sydney Rabbitohs in helping their strength and conditioning team and doing work there, and that's where I thought I really wanted to go with things, was in that elite sport environment. But what I soon realised, that where I was getting a lot more out personally was working with my clients one-on-one and taking these principles of what we do with elite level athletes to keep them in peak condition and apply it into the everyday world. And then I took a year off, went overseas, travelled, worked overseas, and then came back and decided to open up my business and work in that space.
Yeah. Why do you think you preferred the one-on-one compared to the big elite team?
I mean, the year I worked at South for a couple of years, but the first year that I was there was the year that Russell Crowe took over the club, and it was they had documentaries and the Armani suits and all the big name players, and it was a very glamorous setup and lifestyle, and it was amazing. And Souths are a phenomenal club, but for me, I connected a lot more having someone in the room who, after a couple of weeks of training with you, are in tears because it's the first time they've slept through the night. For me, that's more meaningful than, the year that it was the first time in 40 years that South made the finals. Amazing. It was great. And that experience was amazing, but I think it's more about the meaning and the impact that you're having in everyday life for people. And, there's so many stories over the years where I've been able to be on the coal face of these people that who have inspired me in the changes that they've made and how they've turned their life around.
It's super powerful to see transformation in people's life for the better, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any highlight stories you can share with us from your experience so far with people that you have trained? You don't necessarily have to mention names, right? But what are some of the highlights that you've had up until now?
There's just been so many. There is so many. I mean, I've trained people in wheelchairs that, we often find ourselves coming up with excuses as to why we can't do things or can't exercise. And then you see someone in a wheelchair whose life is against them, and they will find a way. And, we will find a way to do boxing, even though you're in a wheelchair. That was amazing. I've had another client who had a severe accident on mountain biking, came off his bike, was almost paraplegic, had to learn to walk again. And he was telling me in his first few days of rehab, trying to get a grape to his mouth took him half an hour. But that will and mindset and determination translated into what he was training wise. And within 12 months of working together, we were able to get him literally back on his bike. And he went back and did the same ride where he injured himself and completed it. And at the end of it, he got his jersey framed up for me, and I've got it at home. And, it's amazing that those people have done more for me than I'll ever do for them, that you lose all your own excuses and you keep a big perspective on life when you see people that have gone through those hardships.
That's incredible. We say that a lot on this podcast, but for those people that are trainers, one of the greatest things you can find, right, is a purpose to help other people. And watching something like that must be incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. And I've got everyday clients as well who are amazing in their fields and what they achieve. And, it is amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about you and what you do for your training, and if you do any sports or anything like that still. Are you still playing soccer, for instance, or?
Well, not at the moment because we're in lockdown. But
not right now.
Yeah, no, I do try to keep playing. I've got a group of mates that we've played together since we were about 15 years old. So every time I think about giving it up, I just can't give up on them. And I'm sure they probably want to get rid of me. But
yeah,
I mean, I love sport and I've always loved sport and it's always a big part of my life. But I guess from a training perspective, it is amazing how your training evolves over the years. That I think when I first got into it, I mean, there was a bit of rehab there, but it was all about putting on the muscle, looking good for girls was part of the original drivers there. And then all of a sudden you want to start getting stronger and, sport performance and those sort of things become a bit more of a priority and it evolves into that. And now I'm, older. It's just about keeping everything moving. And, we're playing football and we're playing against 20-year-olds. I still want to be able to chase after them and outpace them and those sort of things. So a lot of my training is about keeping as mobile as possible, but also keeping that strength, power, muscle mass.
Do you guys play in an evening league now? Or
weekend.
Weekend. Okay, so it's weekend mornings.
Afternoons. Weekend afternoons. Yeah.
We've had a work team together, but it's weekday evening and it's late, so I'm out.
Yeah,
it's the latest game they have is like 10 p.m.
It's crazy.
So if you play a sport at 10 p.m, the adrenaline's up. I'm not asleep until the earliest of midnight.
You may as well just stay up and go straight out to the next morning.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, what would you do for what would a normal training day before all this happened? Let's do that first. At the gym look like for you? What type of, because you're saying you want to keep moving. Do you have some specific exercises that's a bit of a go-to for you that you try to get done every week? Or?
Yeah, again, it's funny. I used to laugh at all the old boys in the gym that would get the foam roller out as the start of their session and give them a bit of grief about that. But now I'm one of the old boys that spend about half an hour on the foam roller trying to loosen everything up at the start of the session. So that would be where I start. And then we talk about functional movement patterns, working in different lunge and squat matrix, plank matrix, to just get the body moving and get that range of motion happening. Then I'll move into some more traditional strength and, I'll have different focuses at different time of the year based on, I don't overly structure things these days. Again, when I first started, everything was really planned out and structured, where now I know my body well enough that I just adapt my training. And if I feel like I've lost a little bit of speed, I'll pick up that part of the training. Or if I feel a bit weaker, or I just feel like I want to focus on improving a certain aspect, I'll just do that for a few weeks and just adapt my training to how I might be feeling on that day. And then always finish with a bit of a cardio burner at the end to really inflict pain on myself.
On a treadmill or rowing machine? What do you prefer?
Again, depends on where my mindset's at, whether I jump on the bike or the rower or go for a run outside. But I am enjoying, obviously can't train indoors anymore. So doing things outside again is, I guess, freshened up my routine and has made me think a bit differently and, bring back some exercises that I haven't tried for a while. And I'm loving it. It's great.
Yeah, same for me. Seem to be doing a lot of core exercises like hollow rocks, heel touches, toe touches, every variation you can come up with just to keep it spicy. But what are you going to do for your training session? The first session, you get to go back into the gym and you have access to barbells, like, bench press or squats. What do you want to do?
I won't know how to use any of it. I won't know what to do with it. I'll look. It'd be interesting, actually. I don't know what I'll do, whether I'll go back to training the way that I used to. I think I was saying to you earlier again that I think my whole life and routine, that the opportunity at the moment is that's all been mixed up. It's all been flipped on its head. So it's a bit of a blank canvas. So it'll be interesting that once we can go back and do those sort of things, whether I just revert to what and go back to doing the same sort of workouts and exercises as before, or whether, this period of time makes you really mix things up and whether I continue to go outside and train more outside. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. I think the challenge, I agree. I mean, I love being outdoors at the best of times, but the challenge we're going to have is we're probably going to get out of this isolation situation smack in the middle of winter. Yeah. So we're probably all going to want to jump back in the gym and stay inside.
Indoors.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it lately. What I want to do, and because I do enjoy lifting weights, but I think I'm going to be quite careful when I come back in because I'm trying to get through this whole time period now without any equipment. So I've just got 2 mats on my deck at home, 2 yoga mats, and that's all I'm all the equipment I've got.
Nice.
So we'll see. I'm probably be pretty skinny by the end of it.
Oh, you might be super mobile as well. It'll be interesting. And again, it'll be
Hopefully.
interesting to see the translation to that, whether that you get back in here and you actually might feel stronger because you've given yourself adequate time to recover. And it's fascinating experimenting with your own body and manipulating those different factors as well.
Yeah, definitely less niggles right now than what I've had for a while. So the first topic or major kind of pillar in your book is mindset. Can you give us some thoughts around a good approach in these days to stay in a positive mindset? Because I think some people do struggle with that.
Yeah, I think we've touched on parts of it already, and I think it comes down to starting with knowing what you value. What are your values and purpose and beliefs? And if you know what those things are, you can create a lifestyle around that and create direction around that. But if you don't know where you're wanting to go with things, it's very hard to not just float on through life. That I think it's very important to take time and think about what your purpose is. And again, I've had that sort of passed on to me since I was quite young, and I've always written out someone who's written out goals and not just what is the objective that I want to achieve by the end of this in a year or 2 years or 10 years, but what are the processes I have to go through in order to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I might not hit all of them all the time. I'll be lucky if I hit 60% of them, but at least it's all moving me in the direction that I want to head in. So I think that concept, I mean, it does get thrown around a lot, but what your purpose is and what your why is, and that changes all the time. And now I've got a young son as well that my why's become all about him and those sort of things. So, It is interesting, but it's also important to review and check back in on that.
It's probably a perfect time now to review it, right? We have, and like you said, a lot of previous guests have talked about exactly the same, like the purpose and the why. And I think now could be a really good time to revisit that for sure.
Well, and as I mentioned, it's a blank canvas right now. So you're actually in a space of opportunity where if you wanted to pivot, now you can pivot, and change things up and work on those things. So if you can see that opportunity and move in that direction, it's great.
Yeah. What are you? Do you have some trainers that work for you now still, or do you have other people?
Yeah. So we've got 6 trainers here in Sydney, 2 in Brisbane, 1 in Melbourne.
Awesome. Yeah.
Who will work with us.
So they're all under the Better Being umbrella.
Yeah.
How long ago did you start that? And what was it just you in the beginning, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I came back from overseas, coming back to, I guess, my story is I had to build myself up first and build my own client base up. So that was part A of the perspective that I wanted to take with growing the business. And then once I got up to a level of being sustainable there and looking after myself, I then brought on other people. And I had trainers that were wanting to work with me and I guess the big thing that I've learned and known over the years is that the majority of people get in this industry not because they want to run a business, it's because they want to help people. So what I set out to do was to allow coaches to be able to do that. So we will manage the whole business aspect for them and create opportunities for them and have them focus on what they do best, which is the coaching people. So that's been the foundation of building the business, and then how we went about that and what our unique difference was in the market as well.
Yeah, can I ask a quick question there? Or not necessarily quick, but what are some of the things that you're looking for when you hire a trainer? Because I think often people, obviously they need their Cert 3 and Cert 4, but, we hear so often that it's a personality thing. Is that right? Or like what could, because right now, one of the reasons why I'm asking is right now there's a lot of trainers without work and, they're itching to get back into it when all this is done, because right now a lot of them can't actually work, or at least not as much as before. What were some of the things that you were looking for when you were hiring?
Well, I guess, with our business, our unique point of difference in our business is all our trainers are university qualified. So they've all spent 3 or 4 years, have a sports and exercise science degree. The reason I did that is I felt that it was necessary. And I know hundreds of brilliant trainers that don't have that degree that I would love to have work in my business. But I feel for our business, it shows a level of intellect and commitment to learning that they've gone through that process. So I guess that knowledge part is a given when people come for an interview with me, because they need that foundation, that they've had that 3 to 4 years and understand the spectrum of different exercise and what's appropriate for someone who's just come out of a cardiac clinic and someone who's just had an ACL, what we should be doing and how we should progress and evolve them right up to elite level athletes and what's appropriate there. But the people that I bring on, and I guess the main thing I look for is, are they client centric? I feel a lot of people get in the industry because I love exercising, so I just want to make people exercise. It's always interesting asking the question of, if you have a difficult client, how would you deal with that? Oh, just get rid of them. And that people's attitude is very much about them, and the fitness industry is very aesthetically driven. Our team are all very people focused, and every difficult client we work with to try and get a breakthrough with them, and how can we coach them to get closer to what the outcome is that they want to achieve. It doesn't matter what we want them to achieve. It's all about helping the client and understanding that client and what drives them and what their purpose and what their why is. So if someone's client centric, they will be focusing on all those things. If someone's not client centric, they will be using whatever their perceptions or what healthy means to them and forcing it, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
That is a great point. I recognize myself a little bit there when I started as a trainer, because I had these ideas in my head what I wanted the client to do without really listening that much to the client, right? And then you always hear this stuff about, if you have a difficult client, you should just fire your client. But that's not always right. Like, you can't just give up on everyone that quickly and easily just because they don't want to do the fancy exercises that you would like to see them do, right?
Yeah. And I guess coming back to the mindset part in the book, I talk about Dan Pink and his book Drive, and that the key to creating motivation in clients is autonomy, mastery, purpose. So clients need to want to drive it themselves. They want to be able to get better and better at something, and it's got to serve a higher purpose.
Yeah.
So it's all about them, that those motivations. You can't just have a carrot and a stick and say, if you don't do that, or you stop eating the junk food, and if you do this, then I'll give you that. That doesn't work anymore. That it's all about getting people connected and helping them get to wherever they want to get to.
Do you have a trick to try and get through that? Because often that can be hard to understand your client, because most people have a bit of a wall up when there's something, not necessarily they want to hide it, but they don't always want to show all their cards, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, it takes time. Do you have, a trick or something that you've learned along the way that where you can kind of get to know them a bit better, a bit quicker, and understand how they can find their purpose?
Yeah, and I think we talk about what makes a good coach is not in the answers that you give, but the questions that you ask. And I think as you get better at coaching, you start to ask better questions, and you know how to. You might have an outcome that you want to get to, and you might have to go through 5 or 6 different steps to get to that outcome. But when you start out, you try to go directly to that outcome. So again, I think asking questions around different ways to get people to open up and find the areas of their life that they're comfortable talking about, you can then start to guide to get down into those deeper levels. But there's no point just talking to people and telling them about you, because that's not going to get them to open up, and you're not going to be able to get into the deeper levels of what's driving them. So that's what I always focus in. Yeah. Clients don't care how much you know; they want to know how much you care.
Yeah.
And by asking questions and finding out about them is how you show that care.
Yeah. That's a key point, I think, for sure. And I was lucky. I had good trainers training me and being a trainer, and that was, one of the things that they try to enforce early. And it's not easy always, especially if that's not in your personality. But as you keep forcing yourself to, like you said, asking questions and learning more about them, you realize there's a lot of positives to that.
Yeah.
So with the current state now, I want to talk a little bit about a good advice for people that are, stuck at home and got to train under these conditions, because that's most people right now. And I do know there's some listeners that recently, signed up to a gym, became a member of the gym January, February, big months, right? But they're new to it this year. And then next minute, all the gyms are closing. They can't actually go in. What are some of the things that you can help people to stay consistent and accountable to themselves, right? To keep up the training that they've kind of just started?
Yeah, I mean, you see all those. My memes at the moment are running crazy. People have all this time to play around with it. That there's it's a shame that lockdown happened, because I was going to start the gym tomorrow. All the good intentions have been derailed from lockdown. Look, I think the biggest thing is the trap that a lot of people are going to fall into is that you're in your home, you're eating, you're sleeping, and it's very sedentary behavior is going to increase unless you consciously change things. A lot of people still underestimate the power of walking and getting up and getting that movement in. So I think that as a fundamental, people need to be doing that every day. So whether it's first thing, I usually recommend first thing in the morning, or less things can get in the way, but creating routine and ritual around those sort of things to your day is important. But there's a huge amount of resources now, and we've spoken about it online. And that if people are wanting to train, more than ever. So finding something that you enjoy is key as well. If we enjoy it, we're going to do it. And that's another thing that we drive into our trainers all the time, that if you can find out what the things are that people like, they will keep coming back. The more they come back, the better the results they will have. So understanding those things and doing more of the things you enjoy, and maybe things that you've forgotten that you used to really enjoy. Like I said, I forgot how much I enjoyed training outdoors and doing those sort of things. It's an opportunity at the moment. So
yeah, for sure. I went for a run on Sunday, and I haven't been running much at all the last few years, and I'm in the street where I live, I've never seen that many people out in their yards. Because people, like you said earlier, stuck at home with their kids. They just want to do anything they can to get out and get a little bit of quiet. So they're out there in their yard doing yard work. So it's interesting.
The biggest winners out of quarantine, I think, is going to be puppy dogs. I mean, dogs now have their owners home all day long to get their attention, and they are being walked like they've never been walked before. It's
so true.
They're going to be exhausted by the end of it.
Yeah. Do you guys have a dog?
No, we've got a cat, but no dog.
Yeah, not going to get a quarantine dog. I've seen that's been
Apparently, people are panic buying dogs now. We've had toilet paper, we've had gym. Now it's dogs that people are going out and buying.
Another big topic in the book that I wanted to get more, even more of your opinion around is nutrition and eating, and it's kind of a big topic with everything that's happening. But what has kind of shaped your perception on diet and nutrition? Let's say even before isolation, because everyone's struggling a little bit now. But
it's interesting. I mean, and there's no other area, I think, in health and fitness that is so transient and changes so much, and there's always a fad and a trend that comes in as what there is in diet. And what I focus in the book is what are the fundamental principles. Most diets work, right? And the reason that most diets work is that there's a consciousness to what you're eating. So if you can bring consciousness to what you're eating, that's your first step to success. That often that we're eating and not thinking about what we're doing, and we're just grabbing what's convenient. And I know a lot of people at the moment are talking about the snacking that goes on. That I've even found myself going to the cupboard, opening up the cupboard, going, "What am I doing here? Why have I come to the cupboard for?" There's a lot of
boredom,
that going on.
right?
It is, yeah. And so the more conscious you are around your eating behaviors, that's fundamental. So doing things like food diaries and stuff like that is a great way to just bring a level of consciousness to what you're eating. Then we focus on quality of food is number one. That if we get the quality of food right, and it doesn't have to be any more complex than protein and 3 veg. If we have protein and 3 veg, a timeless theory that's been around for centuries, that the quantities and everything else sort of sorts itself out from there. And then the last part is the quantity of food. So once you get the quality right, if you're still not getting the right outcomes, the quantities can then be tweaked around a little bit.
What's your go-to meat and veg?
Oh, meat and veg. I've always got a bit of a weakness for pork belly. Pork belly is always a favourite of mine. Actually, you've just reminded me I haven't had it for a while, so might start getting cravings on the way home.
Yeah. Easter's coming up. Maybe it's a good opportunity to make some pork belly.
Yeah. Put that on the list. And sweet potato is probably my favourite vegetable.
Can you explain a bit the difference between sweet potato and normal potato, and why sweet potato has been so popular in the fitness world for the last, 5-6 years, as long as I know, really?
Yeah. Again, a lot of those sort of things is a little bit of information, then sort of it spirals out of control, and that's the new superfood. And we've found this whole new potato that's never existed before. It's got a slower release, slow GL. Slower release of carbohydrates. So you get a bit more of a sustained release, and there's a few more vitamins in a sweet potato compared to a normal potato. But a normal potato is still a really great food source. It's got great starch in it as well. So issues happen in how we might cook it and prepare it, and throwing it in deep fried trans fat isn't going to be great for anyone.
Yeah.
And then, just being conscious around quantities of that as well, that, you don't need to have the extra large chips with your, Big Mac and an extra large Coke. Those quantities that we eat things in is where people start to put on weight and those sort of things.
Yeah, I guess it's with something like French fries or similar. It's so easy to eat way too much because you almost never feel full on it. You just keep eating it and eating it.
Yeah.
How do you usually prepare sweet potato? What's your go-to method there?
I do all the cooking. I've always loved cooking, and I'm really interested in preparing in different ways. A sweet potato mash is always a good one, but probably majority of the time sweet potato chips is the winner.
Oven baked? Just
oven baked, sliced, bit of
Yeah.
olive oil, salt, pepper, bang, can't go wrong.
That's so good. I put a bit of paprika on there as well.
See, I would like that. My wife, on the other hand, she's not a big fan of paprika, so she'd think I'm trying to poison her if I put paprika on it.
Were you interested in cooking even before you started PTing, or was that something that came with being in the fitness industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get asked that question a lot, and I can't remember the time of when I first really got into cooking, but Mum's always been a very good home cook, and even when we were kids, like every dinner was sat around the table and she would produce it. We'd very rarely go out for takeaways and those sort of things. So it's funny when you become a parent, you become older, and you look back on those things and you really appreciate those things that your parents did for you at the time. That cooking for 4 wouldn't have been easy, and making it interesting, and having kids that like certain things and didn't like other things. That would be a challenge. But I think probably that and her interest and it has rubbed off. And then, over the years I've done cooking courses and experimented with food. I'm more of rather than a methodical cook and follow a recipe, I much go off feel and
experiment a little bit.
Try that. That was a disaster. Won't do that again.
Do you remember the first time you cooked a home cooked deal for a date? What did you cook?
Well, I guess when I met my wife when I was in the UK, and then we came back to Australia, and one of the first things I thought I'd give her a nice traditional Australian meal, and cooked her up some kangaroo fillet.
Oh, is she from the UK?
She's from the UK. Yeah. I met her over there. So
this might have been her first kangaroo ever.
A bit of a delicacy. She was in a bit of shock, like I've just cooked Skippy. But I've always enjoyed cooking, and that was probably one of the more memorable ones.
Just kangaroo steak, or
there was vegetables. There was definitely a dessert in there as well, but the kangaroo fillet gets brought up.
Do you still eat a lot of kangaroo, or?
I never ate kangaroo. It was just trying to impress my wife when she first came to Australia. I had to give her something Australian. So, but look, again, there's great nutritional benefits to kangaroo as well.
And I think with environment in mind as well, I think they do recommend eating kangaroo, but I'm a bit confused. I don't really eat a lot of kangaroo at all.
Yeah.
I think I've tried it a couple of times, but it's definitely not my favorite.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the things that you see with your clients? If we can do maybe a bit of a general broad stroke to begin with, and if you have specific examples where what are the things they can do to easily improve on their diet? What's the kind of common mistakes, and where's the big areas of improvement?
I think the biggest one is one they don't like me talking about too often is alcohol intake.
Yes. Yeah.
And look, I'm sure there's a lot, and we all go through it, but people often underestimate the calories in alcohol and those sort of things.
And the flow-on effect.
And
right?
the health, how it impacts sleep, dehydration, all those factors. So a lot of the time it's just about to tell someone to give up alcohol, again, isn't going to happen, but working with them in terms of how they can, I guess, moderate and limit the impact of that. Because once you start adding up for them how many calories in a bottle of wine, and they're having a bottle of wine a night, and all of a sudden, they're having 2 days worth of food just in alcohol alone, it becomes a bit of a reality check for them. So again, I guess one of the things we look at is alcohol-free nights and trying to incorporate more of that, making better choices. So if you're drinking spirits, limiting, vodka, lime sodas and those sort of things.
That's better.
Reducing the calorie. And again, it depends on what their goals are. If someone's wanting to lose weight, then we can have conversations around that sort of thing. If someone's wanting to improve sleep, then we can have conversations around how alcohol impacts sleep. We don't have to talk about calories like that. But if it's about losing weight, then we need to talk about the calories and get an understanding of where the excess energy is coming from and how you can cut back on that.
Actually, alcohol is something we haven't talked too much about on the podcast, and I love that topic. And there's a few things I want to ask, but let's maybe start with this one. So common that people feel a pressure within their work to have work drinks quite often. I mean, luckily I'm not in that group, but I hear that quite frequent, right? That people have to go out 2-3 times a week and have work drinks. What are some advice that you can give for them to try and, they're still going to have to go out and socialize with their work. That's, it's a big pressure to do that. But how can they help monitor or adjust or minimize the alcohol consumption that they do if they have that type of lifestyle? Yeah,
it's part of their work. If they're going to a lunch meeting, they have to have wine. And I think often it's like a lot of things that the thought of something is a lot worse than the actual act of something. So people think it's going to be a disaster saying no to their client that they're not drinking. But the amount of times I know that clients are either having a month off or trying to restrict during the week, and they've said at the lunch meeting, actually I won't have any wine tonight. And then their client has gone, actually, I don't feel like wine. It's almost become just one of those habits that people feel they need to do. So I guess it's just making that decision and again, coming back to why are you making that decision? Okay, well, losing 10 kilos is probably more important to me than having those 2 glasses of wine at lunch, because then when I go home, I'm probably going to have another 2 glasses, and then I'm going to do that over 5 days, and there's a day's worth of food right there. So I guess it's just making those decisions and sticking to them. And then when you actually do them, people are quite supportive of it. You're going to very rarely find these days people putting pressure on you to have to partake.
I think the hardest part is to say no the first time and come up with a reason why you're saying no. But after you do it once, that's how it kind of worked for me a little bit. It's like, I don't drink that much anymore. And it just became gradual over the years. Another myth or misconception around alcohol is that it helps you sleep better. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, again, coming back to the research and knowing what the science says, it may help you get to sleep because it depresses the nervous system and helps people switch off at the end of the day is the reason as to why people might give as to why they do it. But what you find is that once the alcohol wears off, your sleep rhythms, circadian rhythms get disrupted and you'll have more restless sleep. So with sleep, you've got to have your quantity and your quality. So it's a case of it might help you get to sleep, but it's going to disrupt your quality of sleep. So you need to find some other pattern or some other behavior that can help you switch off at the end of the day. Again, if that's an issue that you're finding that your sleep is affecting you. So it can be anything. It can be reading a book. It can be having a shower and just trying to supplement. And I guess the big part of the book and a big reason as to why I wrote the book is about that recovery piece. So bringing in behaviors that help you recover and regenerate so that you can continue to perform at a high level.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's kind of move on and look towards the future a little bit. Greg, for you, do you have any plans about writing another book, or do you have any kind of challenges that you set yourself? Might not be within the book because it sounded like you're still getting over the journey that you had with this one. But do you have any challenges or anything that you've set yourself up to try and achieve in the future, 2020 and everything? It's, originally this was meant to be a year of opportunity, but I think we all got sent back into our room. But without that in mind, do you have anything that's coming up for you?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't factor in COVID into my goal setting of the year. I didn't put that one in there. I mean, in terms of writing books, I haven't got anything in the immediate future. If I did, it would probably be a kid's book. Now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, having family and things like that. But that's probably not a priority. My priority at the moment is to continue to build a team and the business that I feel that we've now created a really strong niche for ourselves and an identity for ourselves in what we do best. And we're doing a lot of work now with corporations building content for their 40,000 employees. That's really meaningful. We're doing stress programs and showing how physical activity and health and lifestyle can help you manage your stress better. So I'm loving creating that content with a really specific purpose in mind for an organization. It's again having that impact at a bigger level. So doing more of that work is definitely on the cards, and having the team involved in that as well. And those aspects are probably the biggest career drivers for me. And I guess seeing other people do well is a big part for me.
What are some of the challenges that you have with running, a team nationwide, you could almost say, right? You have people in Melbourne and in Brisbane, I think you said. What are some of the things that you have to work around to make that work?
Yeah, and again, I guess it's a lot of businesses going through it now because everything's online, and I don't get the face-to-face contact with those people that we have in Melbourne and Brisbane as what I do here in Sydney. And even now, we're not in the same space in the office together at the moment. So I think the biggest thing that we're doing is just checking in on each other and just seeing how everyone's going. And I guess the way I like to manage people in the team is find out where they are wanting to go. What are their drivers? What purpose, do they want to fulfill in themselves? And then how do I create the business opportunities around that for them to explore it?
Yeah.
And build that into our growth. Because if people are doing the work that they love, they'll do it really, really well. So I guess that's how I manage the team in that sense. As long as I've got a good understanding of them and their drivers, I can then create a business plan for how they can fit into that.
I love that topic around work culture. And I think I want to ask you a little bit more specific question, because you mentioned one of the things you're trying to do is figure out what your employees, what they love and what they want to do. How do you find that answer? Because I think the first time you ask someone, they might not give you, necessarily the honest answer. They might give you the answer they think you want to hear. How do you kind of get to that with them? Do you have anything you built in that you're trying to achieve, like work around so you can get to that?
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of the time you won't know if you enjoy something till you try it. So we open up opportunities and say who is interested in getting involved in this project or this piece or doing this bit of work. And if people, as important as it is knowing where you want to go with something, I think it's also as important to know where you don't want to go with something. What are the things that you don't want to end up doing? Because often we'll do things that we do because we feel we have to do, and we don't really enjoy it. We don't do it very well, and it can affect our enjoyment over the things that we can do. So again, having those conversations with people, letting them know that they don't have to do those things, and getting them to play to their strengths and their channel when they get to them.
So I've got to ask then, what are some of the things that, kind of more specifics around what you want to do within that business? Like, is there something that you really enjoy? Have you enjoyed the change to going more digital and online, face to face? Or do you realize that, I'm definitely more like a people-to-people person? Or how have you been finding it?
Yeah, I guess, with growing a business, the challenge that I've always faced is I got in the industry because I enjoyed working with people. That I get advice that I need to step away from doing that and get away from the coaching. But that lights me up. Like, I enjoy that part. So it's just always striking that balance of being able to do that, but then also being able to serve the rest of the team and the rest of the business to continue to grow. And that's probably what I struggle with with the most in terms of getting that balance right. But I feel that if I don't have that in terms of that connection to the people, that I can't do the rest of the business well. I can't help understand what are the challenges that they're facing, so that when we have to create content for 40,000 people, how am I meant to write about something that I don't really understand? And so at the moment they are, feeding into each other.
Yeah.
It's just a case of how long I can keep doing that. But if I can build the team around that are all working to their strengths and doing the things that they love, then we'll have a really successful business.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I think, do you look at it as well within your team, who enjoys kind of more the content stuff or more the writing stuff, and how do you? I'm always curious, how do people find their niche, and what they enjoy and what they're good at, because that's not that easy. And I think right now it's become really prominent. So for someone like you, when you mentioning all the content that you guys are trying to build, who decides the content per se, and who is in it? How do you guys approach that? Yeah,
so I mean, at the moment, the way we go about it is I'll map out the general content of what I feel we need to be covering and delivering, and if there's a specific goal in mind that we need to overcome, what are the pieces that we need to cover in that, and then I'll allow the team to decide which parts they might want to work on, and then I'll allocate it based on that aspect. So if some people, for instance, there's a program we're doing at the moment, some people really enjoy creating the exercise program part. So getting in front of camera, creating a program and coaching people through that program.
Yeah.
So great. You can have that. Some people like the written content and writing articles and exploring that part. So great, you can have that content. And then some people are sort of in between, or might want to focus more on pain and injury, and that's their channel. Great, we'll give you that sort of content there. So all of a sudden you got everyone playing to their strengths but achieving the same outcome of what we're trying to.
So it's more like who puts their hand up really for. So you got to speak up for what you prefer to do.
Yeah. Again, and that's it. You've got to back yourself and know what you're wanting to go, and coming back to that, knowing what direction you want to go in, and still needing someone to help direct that. And I think mentors and advisors and coaches always do that.
Yeah, awesome. I was going to ask before as well, when we talked about the challenges, do you have any physical challenges or training challenges that you wanted to try and achieve in the future, or not necessarily even the near future? Is there something on the bucket list of, physical stuff to do that you haven't done yet?
I guess Kokoda is something that I've always wanted to do. And one of my really good mates, Nathan Charles, he has cystic fibrosis. He played for the Wallabies. He was doing a trek to Kokoda this year, and it was meant to happen in June, so we were planning to go on that. But unfortunately, we couldn't do this year. But I mean, at the same time, I'm also expecting our second at around that time, so I was going to be pushing it on all fronts. So that's been put on the back burner, and hopefully we can do that next year or in the near future. That I've always loved travel and history and physical challenge to that as well, and the spiritual side of being such an iconic moment of Australian history. That's probably one of the things that I would like to do. But I guess in terms of my physical goals, it's to just be able to stay in the best physical condition I can be to serve other people, and still beat my son in a 100-meter race when he's 18 would probably be my number one goal.
The 100 meters, that's a tough one for your hamstrings when you get a little bit older, I think. Well, if you're going to do the track though in 2021, what's your approach to training for that? Because I think that's actually a lot of people's, one of the things they do want to do. That's, not common, but it's not unusual for people to have that goal. How would you approach the training to that?
Well, again, I guess it's like training for anything, and we approach our individual clients the same way, whether it's to get better at tennis, whether it's to be able to, walk up a set of stairs pain-free. It's a case of, let's look at the movement. What are the physiological things that the body is going to need to be able to do to do that? And then let's break it down in pieces and work backwards from that. And so I guess, we could Kokoda, it's long amount of walking back to back in different terrains and conditions. So spending all the time in the gym is probably not going to serve me best. It may help in strengthening and building a bit of a base, but going out there and doing trail walks and doing it back to back and focusing on the recovery and those sort of things is a big part of achieving that.
Is the climate a big challenge there in the track? I'm not...
A little bit. I mean, it's not like you're going to Antarctica and places like that where it's extreme conditions. But again, I haven't got to the stage of where I've broken it all down. It's been a bit more of a pie in the sky sort of ambition to do it.
You've had other challenges this year thrown at you, so that's understandable.
This year's been a monster year for us. There's been so much going on. But that would be something to work.
Have you ever trained someone that did that or before?
Have I trained someone to do Kokoda? I'm sure I have. No one's coming to mind, but again, I've trained people for all different types of endurance events, Ironmans, big walks through Europe and Asia, and actually trained a group of guys to do South America. There's the 5 peaks. So we had a group of 4 of them that were raising money to do that, and we trained them for that. So a lot of it was again getting their cardio base up and getting them nice and strong and getting them to be able to perform and make decisions under fatigue and
under altitude.
Altitude. So again, that's a really hard one to replicate. But again, the fitter you are, the better it's going to be for you.
What's some of the most interesting requests that you've had as a trainer for a goal that they want, like one specific goal like that they wanted to achieve?
Wow. There's been a few. I mean, the one I always love is, can you just remove this bit of fat right in this part?
Specific.
Just like, sorry, the surgeon's down the road. You've come to the wrong place. We can't just, pinpoint those little areas.
Oh, wow.
No one's again springing to mind in terms of weird and wonderful goals.
That is odd though, that people still think, especially this day and age, right? Like that people think there's certain areas that they can just focus on and get that into that perfect shape that they want.
Yeah. I mean, look, and to a degree you can. You can manipulate muscle mass. And so you can work on improving muscle mass. Fat mass you can't spot reduce. It's got to be an overall. And I guess a big thing that we always work on is people have got to embrace their body for what it is and look at the amazing things that it can do and not look at what your flaws are and get disheartened because your body can't do a certain thing. And, I guess a lot of our work's been in injury and those sort of things, and people often just look at what they can't do because of injury. And if you tell someone you can't do something, it's not going to be motivating to them. So our approach is always find ways to get them moving that they can do and they can do it with success and that they can enjoy, and then we can build out from there. That if the body feels safe and you can feel like you're achieving outcomes, you will perform better and you will all of a sudden forget about all the things you can't do.
Yeah, it's definitely better to look at performance instead of your appearance. But one thing I wanted to ask was, what are some of the injuries that you've been through that you've had? Because it sounds like you've had a little bit of a history with it. Can you talk us through some of them or some of the most interesting ones that you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of injuries. Playing sport, it comes with the territory. But
soccer, definitely.
Yeah, soccer. Yeah, I mean, even cricket, I've had a couple. But my knees, well, particularly my right knee, I had a lot of problems from the age of about 13. I went into a tackle awkwardly.
That early?
Yeah. It was really, and again, it was quite early on. Bad tackle. I would rehab myself, follow everything down to a T that the physio would get me to do. At first, they thought I did ACL, but it was more a subluxation, which is like a slight dislocation. The kneecap moves to the side, tib and fib slightly dislocate, come back. Somehow didn't rupture any of my medial ligaments or anything like that, but just really stretched them out. But I would do all the strengthening programs. I'd work on my, ITB was tight, VMO was weak, and so I would do all that.
13?
Yeah. Wow. And then I would build it all up. I would go back to play a couple of weeks in and same injury again. So that frustration of feeling, like you're constantly in rehab and you can't do the things, like I 100% get that. And then, over time, I learnt more about my body, and I actually moved away from doing a lot of like heavy strength work and isolation work to focusing on getting the body to move more functionally and focus on the movements that I needed to improve on where I was getting the injury. So the stop and change of direction, and found a lot of my issues were coming more from my ankle. So focusing on more ankle mobility and getting my ankles moving more, basically transformed the way I trained. But then that changed my outcomes in getting injuries. So I've gone nearly 15 years without that injury. I had a slight injury last year where they thought again I'd done my ACL going into a tackle badly. Self-preservation goes out the window once you cross the chalk. But that's back to full fitness now.
Can I ask your opinion on, if you look back at yourself at 13 before the injury, do you think at that age there's any exercises or strengthening you can do to minimize the risk to do that type of injury?
Yeah, again, I'm not a specialist in youth training, but my approach to youth would be, again, bodies change at different rates and very rapidly at that age. And, some go out and some go wide, and then it's a case of getting body awareness is probably the biggest thing that I would coach in a young athlete, that the more they can understand and get that proprioception of their body and movement and not too much isolation work, I think is paramount. And moving in multiple directions, being able to load and unload and change direction, it's important when you become an adult, but I think it's even more important as your body and your center of gravity and all those factors are changing so rapidly. You need to be able to keep connected to that.
Kind of doing more sports, really, like doing different sports maybe, or
and some of the research I've seen is that there's an increased rates of injury in young people because they're specializing too early. So doing too much of the same thing over and over and again can be really negative for the body and movement. So testing in different ways and moving in different ways, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and that's probably relevant for us as adults as well.
Yeah,
I think,
100%.
Because we lose more and more sports and play as we get older, just because there's other priorities. But I think that's one of the reasons why we often see injuries later on, especially when people start playing stuff like corporate soccer and things like that. You just feel like there's people getting injured left, right, and center.
Yeah,
and it's probably because they sit on their bum 8 hours a day every day, and then 1 hour in the evening they're going to play soccer. It's I feel like that's a high risk sport.
It's but it's also funny that people remember what they were like when they were 15, 16 and haven't done anything for 20 years and then run out in the park and try and play the same way and wonder why their bodies aren't going to keep up with them. So you've got to condition the body as much as you can and look after it. You've only got one.
Yeah, that's it's such a good point. I used to be a trainer of beach volleyball at Manly.
Yeah.
And you get people there and you ask them, pretty much always you'd ask if people had played before any volleyball. And often you get yes. But then you ask how long ago was that? And then 10 years plus. Yeah. So I'm like, well, you're basically a beginner again.
Yeah. You're starting again.
Are there any sports that you look up to or any athletes that you've, that you really are a big fan of?
I've always admired Muhammad Ali. I mean, a phenomenal athlete, but probably more than anything is his mental resilience, his mental toughness. He would beat people before he even stepped into the ring, and he would tell them how he was going to beat them. And, it may be a bit of arrogance and cockiness there, but, I think he I did a research project on him when I was in high school and I was fascinated by him. Other athletes, modern day athletes, and I appreciate them all. I mean, we're blessed in a professional sporting era now that these guys are just doing things that you never thought were possible. I mean, your Messis and your Ronaldos, and then your LeBron Jameses and your Steve Smiths. All these amazing characters that used to come around once in a generation that just seem to keep coming through now. So it is amazing to watch them.
We're just going to be starved this year. I think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Getting desperate.
Do you follow a lot of European soccer, like Messi and stuff? Yeah, playing over there.
Yeah, well, my dad's English, so Dad's always been, and I guess that's part of my passion for coaching has come from is as a kid, he's always been heavily involved in all the sport that I've ever been part of. He's always been the coach, and all my mates have always known him and, referred to him as Johnny. And,
was he a strict coach or a friendly coach? I've had both when I was a kid.
Yeah, both. He was probably stricter on me than anyone else, but that's common. But I loved it. I love the time that, and again, as you're older and you become a parent yourself, you appreciate time more than anything, and the time that he put in, and the effort and the relationship, and the influence that he had on all these young boys' lives. They all talk really fondly of him, and he still comes along and watches every game of football and cricket I play, and gives me some helpful feedback along the way as well. But I can't even remember where we started with this conversation talking about
Me neither, but I did have another question. Where do you which position do you play when you play soccer? Do you guys play 11-a-side or?
Yeah, 11-a-side. Wow. So I mean, we play it's club soccer. It's social, but it's Division 1, so it's still of a decent standard. And we often ask ourselves, do we drop down a few divisions, make our lives a bit easier? But I think it's always, my approach is, why you can still be competitive, push yourself at that top level. And, like I said, I love coming up against, 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and being able to, run past them or keep up with them is a challenge, right? It's
so you're an attacker or?
Yeah, down right or left midfield on the wing. So I've got terrible ball skill touch. It's not my strength, but fitness and speed is what I've got. So I'll just run for you. Don't expect me to do much with it. But
that was a bit like I was as well. I never had good ball skills, but I could run a bit. But I think for that reason they put me as a defender.
Yeah,
I'm impressed that you're still midfield. You still have some
occasionally,
skills.
If we're short on defenders, I get dropped back there. But the boys will love talking about that.
That's awesome. So did you get to finish a season or just before?
Yeah, just before. Look. I mean, we had a cricket, so I play a lot of cricket. The cricket in the summer, football in the winter. So we actually had a cricket tour last year to the UK, and I injured myself the week before going on cricket tour. So it was all up in the air as to whether I was going to even play. But that was going to be my last game of football for the season anyway. But managed to get over to the UK, and literally the day before the game was, our first game of cricket was due to start, I got the results from my MRI. Because the physio had thought that I had done my ACL doing all the tests and everything. And luckily the scan came back clear. So I was able to play, and we played just about every second day when we were over there. So it wasn't that bad, but at first they did think it was a bit more serious.
So they thought it was the ACL and kind of confirmed that it wasn't, and then you were just back to playing, like you could just go back to sports again?
Yeah, I mean, I had a knee brace. I mean, cricket's, it's not soccer. Yeah, it's very different. And I open the batting, so I don't have to run in and bowl and do too much. And so I was able to get by and do that. While we're over there. But being injured is never fun. Not being able to perform, but at the same time, it's probably where I've learnt the most about my body and how to train it and nurture it and recover it and those sort of things, so that I bounce back a lot quicker these days as well.
Yeah, that's so good, because I think being injured, it's one of the most mentally frustrating things, right? Because you want to do this or that, whatever sports you're doing, and when you can't do it, you just... I tend to get a bit moody. It's one of the things is like, shit, because at the moment I can't surf. And that's one of my big outlets that I love to do, and not being able to do it, it's just super frustrating.
And it's the mental process as well, right? And it's your time and your downtime, and even for me, like, sport is a big part of my social connection and those sort of things that I miss a lot of that interaction of things that, it's funny. Once it gets taken away, you realise what a hole it leaves in your life. And I think that's the other thing that's going to come off the back of it. You're going to get a great appreciation for the things that you probably were taking for granted before all this hit.
Yeah, that's such a big thing for everyone training here as well. Everyone just miss seeing each other and hanging out for an hour. It's kind of, the best hour of the day, as most people say, is like coming into the gym and train.
Yeah.
And that's all kind of been... thrown out the window right now.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do with our corporate business at the moment. Is we're getting a lot of feedback from companies that obviously people are isolated, so they're missing out on that social connection of coming into the office. They're stuck in their house, so they're going to be sedentary more than what they would coming in, part of their commutes, and going down to the cafe to have lunch. So they're just going to the fridge. So there's going to be less activity. So at the moment, we're finding that businesses are coming to us going, we need your help now to get people feeling socially connected again and doing something together. Even if it's online, at least participating in an activity together helps them feel connected to that activity, and then also getting people moving and getting the blood circulating and just feeling good again.
Yeah, definitely super important now. All right, let's round it off with a couple of quick and easy questions. Well, quick questions, but it doesn't have to be a quick answer. You can talk around it if you want. With us now being indoors so much, what's the last kind of good movie that you watched?
Oh, good movie. The last good movie was probably The Gentleman.
The Guy Ritchie one?
Guy Ritchie one that was,
Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah. My wife was very hesitant to watch that one. She was like, oh, it just looks like she loved it. It was a brilliant, really good, well put together movie. But obviously now being indoors, there's lots on Netflix and all those sort of ones that we've been watching.
Oh yeah, that's not on Netflix, is it? No.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think
so, yeah. Hugh Grant was incredible in that one.
Yeah. It's a role that you're just not used to him playing, but he was brilliant. He was probably my favorite character on there.
His character grew on me in the beginning. I thought the first few minutes I was like a bit annoyed that it was Hugh Grant. I was like, he doesn't really fit in here.
Yeah.
But then after a while, I was like, he's awesome.
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your go-to training music?
Or
do you even listen to music?
No, I love music. As I said before about the foam rolling, and I get grief from the team now about how old I am because I'm playing Kings of Leon in the gym thinking this is the best music ever.
That's awesome.
Thinking it was only a couple of years. They're like, you're so old. Kings of Leon, that's ages ago. And I'm like, surely that was only the other, a couple of years back that they were big. And they're like, no, you're past it. So now, I find myself saying things like, they don't make music like they used to. And, but yeah, probably Kings of Leon's always been
they're
favorite.
awesome. But they haven't released anything new in a while.
Not for a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. My other one was, what's your go-to training equipment at home? And is that the foam roller? I was going to ask that, but I thought maybe that was
the foam roller always gets a good workout. It comes everywhere with me.
Do you have one of those hard rumble roller things, or is it a normal flat one, not the one with the spikes?
It has little spikes on it, not big spikes, and it's not the rigid one, so it's a nice little balance. But also TRX is always a very versatile piece of equipment to get some strength work in. And
do you hang it up inside or out on the day?
Outdoors. So again, and then it's a great thing, you find a branch of a tree or some horizontal beam somewhere that's sturdy enough and hook it around, and you've got a whole new way to manipulate your body weight to build strength and focus on movement, which is good.
I've actually never been a big user of the TRX, not for any reason that most of the gyms I've been a member of or been a coach at. We just haven't had them. But what are some of the big benefits with a TRX? Obviously, it's easy to use now because it's small, doesn't take out that much space. It's fairly cheap, I guess, for home gym equipment. I'm sure they're selling a ton of them now.
Yeah.
What are some of the exercises that you love doing on the TRX, and what are the benefits of those exercises?
So I love the TRX because you can use it to add load to the body, but you can also use it to remove load. So again, when it comes from a rehab perspective and improving movement quality, that we want to reduce the load in the body. So you can use it as a counterbalance in different lunge and squat patterns, so that the body feels safe in doing a movement that when you start to put more load in, it'll be able to do it successfully. So I like it from that perspective, but then I also like the fact that you can manipulate it to create less stability, which increases demand for strength in a less stable environment, and manipulate your own body weight so that you have less or more of your body weight to make an exercise easier or harder as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does make sense. You can, I guess like a upright row on it would be less resistance, and then a lot of the ab exercises would probably be more if your legs are up. Yeah,
even a horizontal row would add resistance in, but I guess a way that I like to use it is if I'm doing, say, a lateral lunge, and I've got a client who might be lacking hip mobility to go into a lateral lunge. By having their hands on a TRX, it enables them to sit back into that lateral lunge and get a better feel for what that balance and what that movement will be, so that when we remove the TRX and they've got their whole body load on it, they're able to get into that position and know what that feeling should be like.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Okay, my last question is kind of two-part. So I want to know where some of your sources of inspirations are for fitness and training. But then the other side, I think you're very obviously very involved with your business, but it's one of the things that you're really focusing on now and that you're prioritizing. What are some of the inspirations that you are looking for within that space as well? Twofold.
So we're talking people and things
can be
that
people,
that have,
books, podcasts, anything. Like, what does inspire you to do better? Let's start with the fitness part. Like to better yourself maybe, or better your clients, or anything like that.
I mean, I guess probably one of the most influential people that I learned from. I mean, I've had great mentors over the years where I've learned so much from different people. But I think there's a guy in the States called Gary Gray. He really changed the way that I looked at the body and how to train the body. He is the physiotherapist for Michael Jordan and phenomenal athletes. He's sort of known as the father of functional training. He's more from a physio perspective. I've always admired his work in that fitness space. I guess nutrition-wise, there's John Berardi in Precision Nutrition have I think really simplified and done a great job in getting people to understand nutrition principles. And then I guess from the business side of things, lots of people to admire. I guess probably one of the people that have had a great influence on my life is a good friend of mine, Jack Delosa. He runs a business called The Entourage. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary, which again is crazy that we met all those years ago. But they do a lot of education around entrepreneurship and building businesses, and he's been amazing and amazing to see what he's achieved from when I first met him, where it was just him in a room sort of making stuff up on the fly, and now he's got this massive training organization. So
he does business coaching, or
so I mean, it's a big organization now, so they've got educators, and he's still heavily part of that. But it's a education program on how to build a business and take a business from 6 to 7 figures and those sort of things. But what are the fundamental principles across all the areas of sales, marketing, finance?
Yeah. He's going to be busy, I'm sure, in the near future.
Yeah,
even busier. I'm sure.
Busier. Again, I think that's always a good sign of someone who can take complex principles and make something really simple for people and digestible for people to understand. Is again another sign of a really good coach, is that by telling everyone all the science behind everything doesn't make you seem like a good coach. But if you know all the science and you're able to simplify it and pass that on to someone so that they can understand and implement it, then that's where you show mastery in your coaching.
Yeah, that's kind of what you did with your book, I would say.
Yeah,
in a way.
But that was my outcome that I wanted to try and do, is try and just take out a lot of that noise for people, and just make it really simple for them on what they need to focus on to perform well. And I think probably one of the big things, and that might even become even more relevant in the market now, is just recovery and regeneration. That if you look at professional athletes, for instance, in the 90s, there was a big push on just trying to smash them and get them to train as hard as they can and as often as they can. And then injuries started to go up and performance started to go down, and people couldn't work out what was going on. That you'll see now that a lot of teams will basically just focus on recovery methods from game to game. That it's not about trying to get them to push harder. It's a lot of the time it's about pulling them back. And I think that what we find with the people that we deal with in the corporate space is they suffer the same type of burnout and overtraining. But a lot of it is more mental.
Yeah.
But the physical can play into that. So by physically manipulating the body to recover better, and sleep's improving and getting brain breaks throughout their day and going on holidays, and manipulating the body will enable them to perform better and be more sustainable and not get sick and not get injured and not get burnt out by their jobs and their careers. So the fact people are now at home and they've got the flexibility of working at home can also mean that they might not, they'll work longer hours and push themselves harder, and there's no separation of space for them between work and home. So I think that's a big part for people, is to create structures and frameworks about being on and being off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky and you're aware of it, all this stuff that's happened now has actually enabled me, at least, to just slow down more, because I've gained about 10 hours a week that's not spent traveling anymore.
Yeah,
and that time could be like much slower pace than what it used to be, and all my cooking is just done at home now. I can cook my breakfast fresh and eat it at home, instead of like having to rush and prepare it in the night before and make my breakfast and lunch and take that to work. It's been actually really good for me. But yeah, I know I said that was the last question, but I wanted to ask you another thing with what you just talked about. Is what are some of the recovery methods that you prefer? Do you implement something in your own life, or is there something that you often recommend to your clients? It could be either or.
I guess, it's again finding what works for you. I mean, the fundamental core foundational piece of recovery is sleep. So making sure that you've got a really good sleep routine and getting that quality of sleep, because that's where your body releases all the hormones and enzymes that helps the body to recover. So again, if you're not sleeping well, you're not going to be recovering well.
Can you talk a bit more about that? Because I feel like often people think that they sleep well or they don't need sleep, and how can they kind of know that their sleep could improve, and what can they do to improve it?
Well, I guess I mean, a personal story for me is where, again, I was 18. I was new into the industry. I was studying full time, working full time, going out, living the uni lifestyle of going out most nights of the week. So I was getting, a few hours sleep every night and just pushing myself nonstop. And, your parents say to you, I think you're burning the candle at both ends. You're not getting enough rest. And, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'll sleep when I'm dead. That mentality. Yeah. When you're young and naive. And, unfortunately I nearly did do that. I was driving home from work one day and I fell asleep at the wheel. And that pretty quickly woke me up to, you're not invincible, and that sleep is a key component. Luckily, I was not injured. It was amazing that I somehow just glanced the car coming the other way and everyone was fine. But, you
tell that story in the book. So you actually just brushed the car, did you? And
I came over the hill. He saw me coming. He veered across and we just glanced at each other, and I sort of came to and was like, what just happened? And my side mirror was dangling off and I could see the car braking in the rear view mirror. So it was a bit of a wake up call. That it's not sustainable.
And how many hours do you think you slept a night in that period?
So it wasn't just one night. Again, you can get away being sleep deprived one night and you'll be fine. It's about what you're doing regularly. And I was probably getting 4-5 hours a night. You're young, you're full of energy, you feel invincible, and
it's crazy.
I was loving my life because I was doing all the things that I wanted to do. But unless you're looking after yourself, it's not. I mean, that's quite an acute example, but I deal with people all the time that have chronic examples of this, where they've trained their body to function off 4 or 5 hours sleep because that's what their work entails of them. But they then get to a stage where they're in their 40s and 50s and their body starts giving out of them. They start developing cardiac conditions or cancers or adrenal fatigues, that unless you're getting that adequate recovery, your body, there's a reason why your body needs that sleep. And that a lot of the time it's our own ego that stops us and thinks that we don't need that. So sleep's a fundamental part of it, but also, so we talk about pause, stop, reset. So creating pauses in your day-to-day part. So stretching, breathing. So meditation, mindfulness is big at the moment. Creating those pauses in your day to be reflective, to focus on body care. A really important one of the things I love to do is have a sauna or a swim. Again, there's physical and physiological benefits to.
Do you have a sauna at home?
To those, not at home in the gym that we train out of. We've got a lovely setup there in the hotel at Fraser Suites there that's got a sauna and a pool and a jacuzzi. So again, those times where I'm feeling a bit burnt out and overwhelmed, and some of my best thinking is done while I'm sitting in the sauna in the heat by myself without distraction and just my own thoughts. Again, for me, I guess that is my mindfulness practice is doing those sort of things. I'm a person that struggles getting up in the morning, and I might get to a stage where I get into meditation or mindfulness, and I have clients that I recommend looking at those paths. But for me, that's my time in that sense.
Do you have a dead quiet in the sauna, or do you play anything? Or
again, it depends what mood I'm in. Sometimes I just want silence, and then sometimes I might put Kings of Leon on. I'll put some music on again, just adapting to your state. Again, I think that's one of the things that I learned, that you can have the best program in the world, but you need to be able to adapt that to the individual and how they present at a point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, awesome. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate that. That was a good chat, and nice to be at least a little bit social these days.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's again, you crave it when you can't have it, and it's been great coming on. And I feel like I could talk to you all day.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to do it again. But guys, if you do want to look a bit more into what Greg is all about, number one, I would recommend the book Sweat Equity, and you can follow him on Instagram. Although, like you said in the beginning, not the person that has thousands and thousands of Instagram followers, but I find that refreshing these days. It's greg.stark, and then your business is at Better Being PT.
Correct.
Greg, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim.